growing body of research that links childhood invalidation with emotion dysregulation in children, psychological distress in adulthood. This field is growing. I suspect that it will continue to grow. One of the things that happened that in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, the only data that we really were able to use to talk about invalidation was childhood abuse, because that was a concrete event that we could take, and it was easily measured, right? We could get statistics on childhood abuse, and so we could say how prevalent it was and how often it happened. And yet, for many of us, and myself included, I would sit and say, well, I wasn't abused, so it's not relevant to me. You know, I got spanked, and yeah, you know, I got yelled at, and okay, that might have been abuse, but it wasn't like real abuse, you know, at least in my head, it didn't match that. So I wasn't able to connect with that, but what I was able to connect with really was when I understand invalidation, because the thing about abuse that doesn't help us as therapists is abuse implies intent. And invalidation doesn't necessarily. And invalidation often happens without intent to do it. When parents are involved in their own divorce and their own conflict, their own situation, unavailable for the kid, they may be very, very well-meaning and very loving, but that can be incredibly invalidating. We wouldn't necessarily consider that abuse, would we? But yet the effects of that can be profound. So what I would recommend to you and strongly have you consider is that when you're working with your clients and you're looking at issues that maybe traditionally we would have called abuse, it's incredibly helpful to look at them through the lens of invalidation. And I think it's something that more of us can connect to and understand, because even when there is significant abuse, as Alice Miller wrote in her book, Thou Shalt Not Be Aware, there's this wall that we put up to naming it as such. And so I think an easier door to walk through sometimes is invalidation. And when there is really significant abuse in the past, you can get there quicker by talking about the invalidation, getting your arms around that, and then going to the place of being able to really own the real abuse that happened. Let's talk about some of the invalidating environments that our clients come up with. The overexpected child. The overexpected child is the one who expectations are set higher than what he or she can actually attain. They want the best, they want them to succeed, but they always set the bar a little too high, right? And it's for your own good. And I'm going to do that because if I don't set it high, you're not going to achieve it, and I need to give you something to stretch for, and you need to work towards something, and it's all coming from really the best place in a way, and yet the result of it is not good. It can create an ongoing pattern of invalidation. I list this one first as a childhood of invalidation because this is the one that I can tell you from experience that the light bulb really comes on with a lot of folks in treatment. It does. And they get it when they see this, because it's like, wow, that's what it is. I came from a loving home, and yet I'm suffering with these issues. It makes sense. It's just I could never quite be good enough. I was never as good as my sister or my brother, who was always making accomplishments, making the honor roll, you know, you name it. And sometimes it's not even generated by the parents. Sometimes it's generated within us. We simply compare ourselves with what's happening in the family, and we find ourselves constantly short. And so the expectation that we hold is that we do better, and we can never do better, and so therefore we grow up in an invalidating environment. That really, every invalidating environment plants the seed that there's something about me that is broken, that is unlovable. There is something about me that I can't trust. The overlooked child. Again, those who may have grown up in a home where there's been addiction, an alcoholic family, you know this really well. Sometimes there's just no one there. They're there, but they're not there. Mom and dad are working 2 or 3 jobs. Mom and dad are off drinking. Mom and dad are out dating at night. They're not there. And so the overlooked child becomes invalidated because there's no one there to reflect back that feeling. Remember, the social creature with shame, born to fit in, born needing that reflection. needing someone there to say what you feel is okay, wanting someone to validate, and it not being there. They will eventually get it somehow, but it's not coming from the family system. And it really begins to question as they get hit with that naturally occurring shame over and over and over again with no defense against it. There's something about me that's incredibly flawed.